Hi, today I'm going to work on creating a test from a simulated CNC program, and I'm going to be using the MTS simulation software. We're going to use the function NC print in order to create that test, and then as a student we'll take it using NC test. Now you can see we've got an NC print button here, but I'm going to start with a simulated program. We'll use our Haas VF, and I've got a program selected already, MTS mill part hex. Just a simple program that we're going to create a text out of. I like to go to the simulator first. That way I can verify that the simulation is a good simulation. We'll go ahead and start it. Center it on the part. There we go. And I like to make sure collision is on and make sure that it simulates properly. There's no, errors, collisions, that sort of thing, syntax errors. I don't want to make a test out of a bad simulation. So when I verify that the simulation is good, a couple of things that I like to do prior to going into the NC print. I go to the setup, and in the setup I make sure I've attached a workpiece drawing. Now I attached a PDF, so it opened in just a PDF viewer. We'll close that. And I also like to attach a clamping sketch identification, a picture basically of how the work holding is accomplished. And in order to get this picture, when I do my setup, I just rotate the work holding so that I can see it. I'll use the snipping tool that comes with Windows. You can use any kind of screen capture software you want to use. Snipping tool works good and everybody's got it. And I'll just save that as a JPEG. Then when I have that JPEG, we'll go ahead. I saved it in the InCAD folder. You just use the folder open, navigate to where you save that JPEG, grab the JPEG, and then you're good to go. So when the student is doing the test, it's nice to be able to see how the part is being held. So when I have both of those things, the drawing and the clamping sketch done, the final thing that I do is I make sure that anything that needs to have a note, I make those notes in the program. For instance, if I'm going to ask them which workpiece coordinate system, make a question out of the workpiece coordinate system, I kind of need to tell them which one I'm using. Is it G54, 5, 6, 7? So I'll put a note, coordinate system number 1. Here I want short coordinate number 1. Then I can make a question, and hopefully my students know that G54 is workpiece coordinate number 1. So anywhere where we want to, clue the students along, nudge them along, we can do that using notes, and it shows up in their test that way. So I'm going to go ahead and save this guy. Now we saw NC print on the home screen. We don't have to go back out in order to get there. We can also get there through tools. And then the drop down print in table format. That opens our NC print window. I'll go full screen on it. We can use our magnifying glasses to zoom bigger or smaller. I'll make it a little bit bigger because I'm older. I need to see it bigger. And now we can see here on our G54 line, we've got a note coordinate number 1. It helps. And you can see what we mean by print in table format. It's kind of like we dumped the CNC program into a Excel spreadsheet or something. Sequence numbers are first, D codes, X, Y, Z, and then any kind of pertinent data, feed speed, IJKs come next with M codes final, and then the points in the last column there. So in order to make a question from this, we talked about G54. I'm going to left click in the cell. I can leave it alone, which is defaulted. The next option is to make it a question but not make it worth any points, or make it a question and make it worth points. The default you can see is 10 points. You can change that to whatever you want, 50 points. However you want to weight the questions, you can weight it. I usually just leave it 10 so I don't have to make a lot of changes. Say OK, and now we've got a question here. Now if I want, I can click it again and I can make any changes. If I want to be particularly hard to get along with, I can also hide the G. And now when I say workpiece, when I say coordinate number 1, I expect the student to know G54. So I'm going to be a little nicer. I'm going to go ahead and leave the G so that it gives them a little bit. And we can see now this line is worth 10 points. If you had multiple questions, it tallies all of them and it shows you the total for that line of code. Let's do a couple more. Maybe I want to say they should be able to find the speed and the feed information. So I'm going to go ahead and lay that out, and maybe I think they should know what tool and maybe what M code executes a tool change. So we've just by clicking on the cells, we can make that a question. As soon as we have a simulation, then it's very easy for us to make questions out of the rest of it. And then another function that I want to show you, if we scroll down to tool number 2, tool number 2 is roughing feed rate. You can see is 83.333. So maybe left click in there. Maybe I've given the student speed, feed information, surface feet, chip load, whatever, and I want them to do some calculating. Well, in this particular instance, I don't want to guarantee that they've rounded the same way I've rounded. They round off by, a thousandths, that still may be considered okay. So here I'm going to say, I'm going to hide it. I'm looking for a feed rate, but I'm going to give a tolerance. A maximum tolerance of 1 and a minimum tolerance of -1. That way, as long as they're within 1 inch, basically, of 83.3333, then we'll consider that a good question. That way, we take rounding out of the equation, but we know they can calculate the feed rate properly. I never allow rounding on a G code, obviously, because we're looking for specifics, but in a situation like this, we want to be able to let them round. And you can round whatever you want. You can round 1/1000ths or 1 inch, whatever you want to round, you can see it in there. And I say, okay. Now I've got a couple of questions, and it's very, very easy to just keep adding questions. You can do, anything, X, Y's, the J, any cell can be made a question. We're going to look at making a couple of things. The next thing that we want to do, if we look at the icons across the top, we've got our drawing. So when I click on that drawing, it shows the drawing we have attached to our simulation. We'll close that. Tool summary. So this is the technical information on all the tools that are in our magazine. That guy. The work plan. Now, and you can see I just worked right across the window here on the top. On the work plan, this shows our clamping sketch, so they can see what the clamping was. You can also scale this bigger, smaller, whatever you want. Now all of these grade where it says text input, you can input whatever you want. Maybe the title, a hex of some kind, MTS hex we'll call it. So you don't have to fill in everything. You don't have to fill in anything, but all of these fields are there for you. Maybe you want to say the workpiece is 4 inch by 4 inch by 0.7 inch, and we space here. Something like that. Maybe you want to write the type of material. As I said, anything that you want to put in here, you're free to put in here. And I want to be able to document the sequence of work. So down where it says work sequence, we want to build a list of what's going to happen. On this part where you face mill, we used a 3/8 end mill to cut the hex, and then we used a countersink tool, a 1/8 countersink tool to do the engraving. So I'm going to say up at the top, a new work step. I'm going to select my drop down, and now I'm able to define my work step. This first cell lets us define our work step. And the first thing that we're doing is facing. So there's a whole list of machining terminology here. You can pick from any of them. But let's just for instance say we chose facing, but in our class we call it face milling. Well, if I look on here, there's no face milling. It just says facing. So I really want to use the same terminology that my class is used to using. Very good. I'm going to say OK. And then hover over where it says define work step. We're going to do a new work step, and we're going to call it face milling, and OK. So now when I go back down to my work sequence number 1, I click on it. I click on the drop down. Scroll up and I've got face milling, so we're using consistent terminology. I know that was tool number 1, so I have a drop down of all the tools in my magazine. I have tool number 1, and maybe I want to give them the RPM and feed rate. If I've made it a question, maybe I want to give them the recommended RPM and feed rate here. So we'll say this was speed 8500, so we'll say 500 RPM, and I think we did what, 83.333 IP inches per minute. So now I've given them a place to go, and you're free to put whatever information you want in this window. You can edit it at any time. Now, if I want to make a question that there's worth points, for instance, here I can hide the tool number, and then instead of me telling them it's tool 1, now the student has to answer that question, what tool am I using here, and you can make this worth any points that you want. I'm going to hide it, but we have that option. And okay. So now I'm going to add another work step. The next thing was our milling. So I am click the drop down. Say here I've created one that says mill hex. So I'm going to select mill hex. Number 2, and it was 10,000 RPM. And a feed of, this one was 83. 33 per minute. Yeah, okay. And let's fix step number 1. It was actually 100. Apologies. 100. So at any time you can go back and fix, you can change. If you're like me, I have to fix a lot of things. And now we're going to do a new work step. And finally, we're going to do our engraving. Engraving, tool number 3, and that was also 10,000 RPM, and it was 60 per minute. So now I've given my students a little roadmap, a setup sheet or a process sheet, if you will, that helps them with the information. You can put as much information, as little, whatever information you want in here. Completely up to you. So now we've done that. The last thing I want to do is give them some multiple choice questions. So the next icon across, working left to right at the top, is our multiple choice. And we've got a blank sheet here. So once we go into the multiple choice, we've got our question mark. Now be careful. The next question mark is help. And the help gives us our list of G codes for that controller. We don't want our help, we want our multiple choice, and then we want question. And that question will say something simple: is this a mill project? So once I've typed a question, now I have an answer. Answer icon shows up on top, and we'll say no, and another new answer, yes. And obviously it's a mill project, so we're going to select yes. The software defaults your first answer to be the correct answer, and you just select whichever answer. You can have as many answers as you want. You can have 30. I usually, on multiple choice, go about 4 answers, with one of them being the correct answer. But you can do as many or as few answers as you like. Let's do another question. And let's say, what tools are used? And then we'll say, select all that apply. Now, this isn't going to be a simple yes or no or just one, because there are 3 tools in this setup. So we'll say, all that apply. Pardon my typing. And so now let's list our tools. A new answer. We had a face mill. Another new answer. We had a end mill. Another answer, we had a spot drill. Our engraving with, and then we'll say a boring bar. For this question, we're going to select multiple answers. not the circle, but the check, and then we're going to check 1, 2, 3. So now the student needs to select all 3. Now on this software, you don't get partial credit. So if the student, for instance, had just selected face mill and spot drill, they don't get 60% of the answer. If you don't get all of them right, you get 0% of the questions. Bear that in, keep that in mind. One last question. Let's do another question. And on this question, we're going to attach a picture. So if you see the add picture icon at the top, now where I had already saved that, the picture of the clamping, I'm going to go ahead and grab that. You can see SVG, JPEG, BMP, basically graphic files. You can select from any of those. I like to use, again, the snipping tool to take pictures. You can take a picture of your drawing, your in the simulation, your CAM file. It doesn't matter. You know, whatever you want to add a picture of pertinent to the question, sometimes it's helpful to have a picture along with the question. So I'm going to go to my pictures. I had saved that clamping in my pictures. So now I have a picture attached to this question. You can just drag the arrow in order to resize that picture, whatever size is necessary to see the detail. And then we'll just do another simple question. Is a device used? And then we'll yes, and we're defaulted to the first one, which is yes, so that's the correct answer. So it's as simple as that to create some pretty nice looking multiple choice questions. And you can see we've got a sum of 30 points. Again, you can weight these, you can change the individual questions to whatever points you want. If I want it to be 5 points, I can change it to 5. So however you want to weight your questions, all of them can be weighted however they'd like. So I'm happy with that. So I've got a nice little test now, a handful of questions. Now we're going to go ahead and make it a test. Remember, we're still in NC print. So in NC print, we can print this file, we can do whatever we want with it, but we also create our tests or exercises out of the file. So to create a test, I'm going to say File and create an exam form. Create exam form. One more time, File and create exam form. And we have 2 choices, create an exercise, create a form with time limitation. The first one we're going to do is an exercise, and I'll show you what that looks like. I'm just going to say OK because we've created an exercise. I'm going to go ahead and save this, and I'm going to close it. I'm also going to close my simulation. And now I've created NC print file called MTS millipart hex. I've also got a test file, an exercise file. So now as a student, I'm going to put my student hat on. I'm going to double click on NC test. And I'm going to open that exercise it was just created, MTS millipart hex. Now it defaulted into the NC test folder in the file structure where your simulation software is installed. Have a file that says MTS, CNC System 8, and NC Test. Whenever you install your MTS software, that's where the NCT file is located, the test file that you created. You can move this file anywhere you want to move it. You can put it on a thumb drive, you can put it on a network, it doesn't matter. It's just a text file that's encrypted. But you can move it anywhere you want. So your students select that file, open it, and it's asking for something. Name and a testing number. You can assign them any testing number you want. And then once I've populated something in each window, click continue, my exercise is ready for me. With an exercise, this is an important difference. With an exercise, I can see as the student whether or not I've got the answers correct or not. So as I work down through this, I've evaluated everything. I think this is tool number 2, and then I think M6 is my correct answer there. Coordinate system number 1, I believe to be G54, so I'm going to answer G54. Now, if I want to check myself as a student, the switch mode button If I click switch mode, shows me Q is wrong, M6 is correct, U54 is correct, and I haven't answered anything. So I've accumulated 10 points here and 10 points here. So I can kind of see how I'm doing as an exercise as I go. I turn it off switch mode, I go back and correct it. Another point, you see I did T2 in M06. The controller, the software uses the same rules as a controller. So T02, T2, T01, or T1, doesn't matter. If I put T1 and then switch mode, yep, I'm good. If I put T01 and then switch mode, also good. So the preceding zeros are ignored just like they would be before. So this is an NC exercise, and I can keep pace with how I'm doing at the bottom. I've got 30 of 50 in the exercise. I've got 0 of 25 in the multiple choice. So I've got some more work to do. So that's an exercise. I'm going to go ahead and close this, and we won't save the changes to this. Now I've got this NC print file that I created. I'm going to select it, and I'm going to, instead of going through my simulation, which I could, I'm going to go ahead and just select the NC print file that shows up now and go right into NC print. Everything, all the work that we've done is still there. We haven't lost anything. Our multiple choice is still there. So all this stuff is good. So this time I'm going to say File, create an exam form. Now I'm going to make a test, and I'm going to create a test with a time limit. Let's say 5 minutes. 5's our max. So I set the test length to 5 minutes. I usually like to use a password with no password. As soon as the test is over, the student can reopen it, or anybody can open it and see what the result is. So I'm going to say, retrieve it with a password, and we'll say something difficult like 1, 2. Another thing that we can do is we can say, show us the number of points, or just show us a grade, a percentage. So I'm going to, since we looked at points on the exercise, we'll look at a grade on the test. Okay? And okay. So now we've created a form again. I'm going to go ahead and close this, but this time it's a test. Yes. Okay. I'm going to open again with NC test. Open the same file. One more time, testing number this time, and continue. And it's telling me I've got 5 minutes to complete this exam, and I've got a clock running here. Stop. Okay. Full screen. And now you see the only button I have, excuse me, is save and exit. There's no, I can't tell whether I got this right or not, so I have to know my stuff. I can look at everything. I can look at the blueprint. This is the part that I'm expected to make. I can look at my list of tooling in my magazine. I've got a face mill, an end mill, and a spotting drill here. I can look at my work plan. My work plan gives me some information, some important information. And from here, I can also look at my multiple choice. If I want to do this now, I can, or I can do it later. Is this a mill project? I believe it is. What tools do I think are used? I think this one and this one are used. Get credit on it. Device used, I looked at the picture. It looks like it's in a vise, so I say yes. Now I'm going to go through and answer some of these questions here. I think we use tool 1. I think M7 we'll say is our tool change. A couple wrong. And then we'll say G54. Speed was 100 inches per minute. And I'm using the tab button, takes me from one window to the next. And here I did the math. I think it's 83. I didn't count. So I've got all of my questions are answered. When I tabbed from this cell, it took me into my next batch of answers, which was my multiple choice. So as a student, I think I've got everything all set here. I'm going to go into the simulator to verify. File, Simulate Edited Program will open up the simulator and simulate it based on the answers that I gave. Not what it was originally done, but the answers that I gave. So I can watch the simulation, I can measure, I've got all the simulation tools available to me. Did not collide, it looks like it's supposed to look, so I think I did pretty good based on what I know. So we'll close this. And I can see I did it pretty good. We've got 2 minutes and 40 seconds remaining on the test, but I'm pretty happy with it. So I'm going to save and exit the test. Should the examination, anytime a student accidentally hits the X, says file exit, or hits the red button, it always asks, should you save and you still have time, do you really want to quit? I'm going to say okay. So now I've got that test in the folder that it was open from. As the teacher, I can double click NC test. And now I have an encrypted file here with my name, testing number, date, and time that the test was done. I can open it. And now I go back to seeing the switch mode button. When I click switch mode, it asks for my password. 123. Okay, and now I can see how I did. I got a speed wrong, an M code wrong here. If I look at my multiple choice, it looks like I had a misfire on that one. And if I want to just scroll down to the end, I see I got a 60%. Not too good, huh? We got a 60%. Instead of just the number of correct answers, it was given to me as a 60% instead of that. I do see what I got 30 out of 50 on the program, 15 of 25 on the multiple choice. So I've got all the information there, and I can very, very quickly and easily see where my students were right and wrong. So that's a quick overview of the NC Print and NC Test software. I found it to be a very powerful tool in the classroom. It's also the software that we use here in the U.S. in order to administer any IHK exams, so it's great for your students to be familiar with that software before they have to do that. Thank you for your time. I hope it was informative.